This is a big day for Rail Talk and the Rail Talk audience. Our friend Tink is back, but the difference is this time he's ready to do the big reveal who he is and his history in the game. And I'm 100% sure that now the people will know who he is. They'll have zero problem with what he's saying because apparently their only problem with it was that you were anonymous. Tink, the floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Joe. Well, after writing anonymously online for about 20 years, using the name Tinky, due to a variety of circumstances, it seems like this is the right time to reveal my identity. I'm not using a camera, not because I'm afraid of them, but because I actually don't have one. Believe it or not, I'm using a high quality monitor that didn't come with a camera, but I will try to get one so that in future podcasts, people can put a face to the name. My name is Tony Kobitz. And the reason that I chose originally to use a nom de plume is because as a professional in the industry, I felt more comfortable expressing some opinions and facts without having to worry about possible blowback from people in the game with whom I interacted. I never directly attacked people with whom I did business, but I would occasionally write something critical about someone whose path crossed mine on occasion, or about a hot button topic that I would have preferred not to ignite, so to speak, in person. I simply felt more comfortable expressing myself freely online by using the nom de plume Tinky. And at this stage of my career, anonymity is not important. I've remained anonymous largely because of inertia and also to preserve some of the continuity of my writing being so closely associated with my screen name. The spurious argument that has been made by those who have used my anonymity to avoid debating the substance of what I have written and more recently said on these podcasts is that if my identity were known, it might or would somehow change or degrade the essence of at least some of the many thousands of posts and articles that I've written online over the past 20 years. It was really never a serious argument, given that I've almost always based my views and arguments on publicly available facts. The type of exciting, imagined conflicts of interest or potential biases that apparently some people have been hoping for, they simply don't exist. In fact, as I've mentioned a few times online recently, only a small percentage of those in the game today are likely to even recognize my name because I have not really been in the public eye for many, many years. But now that the proverbial cat is out of the bag, I will briefly review some of the roles, and there have been a number of them that I've played in the game over the past several decades to satisfy the curiosity of those who had a burning need to know who I am. In the early 1980s, I was able to work on the backstretch for the first time when I did both some advising and clocking of horses for the Winnick racing stables. Neil Winnick was the trainer. His uncle, Arnold Winnick, was the better known member of the family and actually a very interesting group of people. And it was really nice for me to be able to get into the game that way. In the mid to late 1980s, I co-authored and co-edited a publication with a friend and mentor of mine at the time, which was called Class Form. It was a publication that was based on the well-known British publication Time Form. And we were never going to be in a position to assess and rate thousands of horses. So we confined it to about 450 of the best horses that performed in the US during that period of time in the mid to late 80s. And we had private subscriptions. We had subscribers including Alan Paulson and Sheikh Mohammed and some high-profile bloodstock agents. So it was certainly gratifying that some serious people were interested in our work, but it was a labor of love for a variety of reasons. And so after 1989, we stopped publishing that. In the early 1990s, I became, I think, the first person outside of California to do in-house television features from the paddocks of various race courses. I was the first one at Arlington Park to do that, and Ken Dunn was the then president, and I give him all the credit for having the foresight and open mind to try that kind of feature. And then coincidentally, he was lured down to South Florida, and I did the same thing for a few years at Gulfstream and at Calder, and was the first one to do those kind of features there. I enjoyed that, but it had its limitations. I prefer longer form to shorter form, and the politics of television was not to my taste. So I pretty much walked away from the screen after that. I did also write editorial columns during the early 90s for the short-lived Racing Times. You had Steve Christ on the program last week. Well, he was the one who created the Racing Times and was the publisher, the editor, and that was a very good experience. It was great to work with Andy Beyer and Steve and Jay Privman and some of the others who were working there, and subsequently were well known working for the Racing Form as well. I also wrote for a British-based publication called Pacemaker and Thoroughbred Breeder as an American correspondent. And after that, I ended up taking my interests into the private sector. I did private consulting and have done private consulting, including buying and selling of horses, managing of some horses for certain owners, appraising horses, and breeding stock, etc. And I've enjoyed that very much for several decades now. I've done a few other things, but those are the primary stops on the road to my less active career at this stage. And it has been, a great pleasure. It stemmed from a passion for the sport, a passion that I still have, but a passion that, as listeners and readers of my work know, often expresses itself in the form of disappointment in how things have unfolded over the past several decades. It's saddening to me, and I hope that we can turn things around. And I try in my own little way to help push things in the right direction.
So Tony, let me just interrupt you for a quick second, just so that way our audience, give you a breath, but also so that way our audience can really kind of breathe in all of your impressive resume. And I may add something that you told us previously, just to make sure that we're covering everything. But you were in the thoroughbred industry. You were a writer for publications. You authored books. You were an on-air track analyst. You were a jock agent, a mating analyst, a racing manager, a legal expert where you were called in for legal court cases to be an expert on the industry. And now you're a podcast star. I would have to say that other than training, you probably check all the boxes of experiences in our industry.
Thank you, John. That's very kind. You're right. I did forget, and it's not insignificant, that in 1995, 96, I played the role of jockey agent for Julie Crone. And Julie was a friend during that period. And I also had, and still have, tremendous respect for her as a rider. In fact, I don't only believe that she's the best female rider in the history of the game, but I think that she ranks quite high, irrespective of gender. And She was, for a variety of reasons, looking to make a change. And I was at a stage of my career where I thought it would be interesting and fun to be an agent. So I became an agent. We had a pretty good year, 7.7 million in earnings or something like that. By most jockey standards, it was pretty good. But the truth of the matter is that I wasn't in that 1 year an especially good agent. And also, more importantly, I did not enjoy the role. It had absolutely nothing to do with Julie. She was a pleasure to work with. I did not enjoy what the vast majority of jocks agents are required to do, namely spin trainers, essentially, a form of dishonesty. Say, yes, I'll ride your horse. And then at the last minute say, oops, I can't. It was very uncomfortable for me to do those kind of things, even though it was a luxury to work for Julie and I didn't have to do it often. So we parted ways and it was mutual. I was happy not to have to do that anymore, but I'm grateful to her for having given me the opportunity. And it was, as you say, one of many disparate and interesting experiences that I've had in the game.